webinar. So we got it, that recording in progress. And first on our list, of course, introduction shall be done by Professor Spiro and myself. And Professor Spiro, the floor is yours, sir.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Darko and John, and all the organizers for inviting us to this important workshop discussion. And we're going to talk about Mediterranean security and move a little bit out of the corona, both in terms of debate and hopefully in terms of the actual pandemic itself, to talk about regional security. Could whoever it is switch the microphones off so that we can hear each other? Thank you very much. Well, why is it important to sit today? Because we are really ending in the Mediterranean. Excuse me, Bane. John, can you switch everyone's microphones off? John, switch everyone's microphones off.
John, you can set up, do it. Okay.
Okay. Because I didn't want us to listen to the shopping list of someone who's instructing her husband on what to get tonight. Important, but somewhat, well, that could be security as well, I guess, between anyone's married will know what I'm talking about. I'll get back to Mediterranean security. I think that we in the last few months, we are moving away. We are seeing an end to a decade of stability in the Eastern Mediterranean. We had a number of years of stability, although, of course, in the periphery of the Mediterranean region, we have seen conflicts, very hot conflicts, such as the civil war in Syria, the war between Armenia and Azerbaijan, and in other regions. But in the core Mediterranean, the core Western and Eastern Mediterranean, we've had a decade of quietness, and we are slowly slipping away from that. Unfortunately, one of the things that happened is that the corona pandemic moved attention away from regional security. And when I say moved attention away, not just of the public, but moved attention away from leaders and decision makers. And decision makers were so preoccupied with the early stages of the corona pandemic that regional security took a backseat. It's normal, it's understandable. Governments find it difficult to deal with more than one, maximum two crises at the same time. But it took attention away, and there were those who tried to benefit from the lack of attention. We see flash spots of potential conflicts on several levels all over the Mediterranean. And we also see an interesting development in which energy and people become both arenas and weapons of conflict. We are used to conflict that is either an interstate conflict fought with hard weapons, such as the recent war in Nagorno-Karabakh, or wars over territory. But now we see that energy and people, migrants, of course, I'll get back to that, they are becoming not only arenas of conflict, but also weapons of conflict. And the actual types of conflicts in our region are changing. We have much less interstate war. It still exists, but we have less interstate war, and we have much more hybrid warfare. Now, with interstate war, it's very clear who's fighting whom and who is doing what. With hybrid warfare, it's either unattributable or at least I would say partially attributable. And so it adds another level of complexity to the conflicts in our region. Another arena of conflict is, of course, the war of narratives. It is the media war, it is the crisis management, and both or each side is fighting for their own narrative, both internally and externally. So we see multiple conflicts, hybrid conflicts, being fought or about to be fought on different types of levels. Especially, we have to look at countries which seek to upturn the current status quo. And I'll give several examples. Belarus, for example, which is using immigration as a weapon against the European Union. Now, Belarus is not a Mediterranean country, but it is impacting the Mediterranean region when there is an organized or institutionalized movement of migrants from Iraq, from northern Syria, through Istanbul to Belarus, crossing the road at crossing the border or trying to cross the border into Poland, and I fear the same will happen with the Baltic states as well, then this is becoming an arena of conflict which has direct bearing upon countries in the Mediterranean. The second example is, of course, Turkey. Turkish provocations in the Mediterranean region are causing great concern to countries in the region. The situation in Libya is unclear, and I can go on and on, giving examples of potential flashpoints in the Mediterranean. And as the risk of corona is receding, not receding in terms of public health and the actual pandemic, but in terms of the ability of countries to treat this crisis, corona is becoming part of our normality, whether we want it or not. It's part of the new world. We are seeing now a move towards a new security architecture in the Mediterranean, as old alliances give way to new realities and new alliances. With Turkey seeking to dominate the Eastern Mediterranean, on the other side, we have Israel, Greece, Cyprus, and several Balkan states who are on the receiving end of these developments. That is why it's so important to renew the security dialogues which were made dormant by the corona crisis. And I would say bring security back from obscurity. Security has receded, security dialogue has receded because of the corona, and all of us, and I certainly include myself into this list, we were preoccupied with corona crisis management, and we need to get back to the harsh realities of regional security because things are changing. We have a very impressive list of experts today. I think we will have a fascinating discussion. I hope this is a beginning of a regular series of meetings, and here I throw this challenge or this request at Darko and John. I think this is a forum that should meet more regularly every couple of months to review developments in regional security. I won't take up much more of your time, except to say that I am personally worried about security developments. I think not enough attention has been given in recent months to the developments of security or insecurity in the Mediterranean region. And when I say Mediterranean, in its wider form, because everything that happens within 1,000 or 1,500 kilometers affects our region. It affects the United States interests in the region. It affects the European Union. It affects Russia. It certainly affects Israel, in which I'm sitting at the moment. And that's why I'm very happy to be here today. Indeed, the wonders of the Corona era, it's not all bad, because I was just telling my family that I gave a talk in a conference in London on Friday. I am in Belgrade today, and tomorrow I will be in Lithuania, and all of that without having spent 1 hour in a plane. So it can't be all bad with Corona. We're meeting in this way very effectively. And I would hand the floor back to you, Darko. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Shlomo. Very inspirative as always. I think it's a great idea that we shall meet regularly, and maybe in March we can ask Gordon and someone else to take the flag and organize the second, and then we'll make the circle on the end. So from my point of view, definitely, I think time of peace will go on soon. Corona do some kind of the business, and I have feeling that many streams and many forces in international relations, they take this break in order to prepare themselves, but not all of them take the break as terrorists do basically. We could notify that most of the terrorist activities are frozen, and the terrorists are basically are afraid of this small and invisible enemy or threats. They are more afraid of that more than the real combat and real enemy. So from the Southeast Europe, and Shlomo is very right, Mediterranean, we shall look Mediterranean region wide, because it affects all let's say side countries. When you watch Mediterranean, we see at least two sides. One, let's say African, and one, of course, African, which divide the Middle East, and one European, which is, let's say, on the north, which again divide the Middle East. But what we can see, developed and undeveloped part of the world, threats. And usually when we talk about Mediterranean security, we are always thinking about threats to Western countries, threats to Europe, that coming from, let's say, Middle East, Far East, through Mediterranean, Africa as a continent, and far beyond. So right now we have at least two main, let's say, two main streams, and I see the one of the major source of turbulence and the next conflict is basically followed by energy security, energy platforms, pipes, sources of energy, etc. So one coming from the east, from Russia, and Russian attempts together with Turks and the British to supply Europe from one direction, and second coming from America, Israel as well, Greece, Cyprus, and many other, Italy, and many other countries, that they are aligned with the Mediterranean stream. So obviously there is not only competition in economy, but also there is a lot of energy through intelligence, through different sources, instability, and of course creating a lot of obstacles from one side to another side to stop or to secure for selves good, let's say, political, economical, or actually geopolitical, if I might say, reasons or sources for welfare for one or on another side. We could just see also situation what's happened with Nord Stream 2, which is almost complete by political decision, is stopped. And also we are seeing also political situation in Balkan and Western Balkan countries, which directly reflect to big geopolitical games. And also we can also further elaborate conflict between Russia and United States on a hybrid territory, which we call Ukraine, or of course using Belarus for the unexpected, let's say, export of refugees and new Game of Thrones. So definitely after American withdrawal from Afghanistan and leaving the most sophisticated weapons to Taliban, situation in Afghanistan dramatically changed and immediately impact situation in Mediterranean, of course, as well in Europe and Western Balkans. Russia, from one side, need to supply and allocate a lot of weapons and a lot of energy and financial sources to secure border of key allies in Kazakhstan, Tajikistan, all those countries on stand, because definitely Taliban from Afghanistan will jeopardize the Russian interests, Russian, Turkish, and British interests in Caucasus and far beyond. Of course, immediately Russia returned let's say this tennis ball right away with emerging Belarusian crisis, and that is gone. But to conclude, I think this pandemic give us some time to think what we can do as scientific researchers, which kind of the light we can bring to the different conflict, and how we can cooperate despite the fact that our politicians sometimes are unable to cooperate, and despite of the fact that even the roof organizations such as UN never stop any conflict, always react after bloody, let's say, bloody conflicts and many lives that were lost in different conflicts around the world. So I think we shall take the flag, we shall frequently communicate, we shall frequently exchange our views and ideas, and I am sure that I'm not going to speak any more further, because as Shlomo said, we have a lot of qualified colleagues and experts on the issue, and I would like to just suggest that next on the list we make some little change, that it is our friend from Cyprus, because he is in rush, and if Professor Nomikos doesn't have any obstacles, I would like to give the floor to what was the name of our friend from the Cyprus? Yanni, I think Yanni, or Professor Nomikos. Can we give the floor to?
Yes, one moment.
Yes, Yorgos, of course.
George, can you unmute? We need to unmute George. Okay, George, go ahead.
Okay, well, good afternoon, good evening to everybody, and thanks for this invitation to pass to you the perspective of Cyprus. truly enough, we have a bunch of Mediterranean security issues. Well, the name of the region, Mediterranean, gives exactly its importance, the middle of the world. And I've given the title Cyprus as an unsinkable aircraft carrier to put stress on the fact on how the island is used or misused. So I'm going to give you just in a few minutes an assessment from our perspective of how the island is used or misused by the powers that be. The issues are stated. We have terrorist operations, irregular migration flows, and energy security, energy reserves, and the energy reserves are around the seas that surround the island, north, south, east, and west of the island. So the island is geostrategically has a unique geostrategic position. It straddles 3 continents: Asia, Europe, and Africa. For this reason, it bears a unique geostrategic value. However, there is a double paradox with regard to the Republic of Cyprus. What is this double paradox? Let me explain myself. On the one hand, as I'm based here in Lefkosia, or Nicosia as is known abroad, the capital of the Republic of Cyprus, I see a high level of navel gazing and introversion among the political elite of the island. We have all these very, very hot security issues, but believe me, the body politic of the island has already started the presidential election race that is in February 2013, something like we are 15 months away, and the focus is not discussing the security issues that are a real threat to the indigenous population of the island, but who is going to run for the presidential elections. This is paradox number 1. Paradox number 2, the Republic of Cyprus is a full member state of the European Union, yet the European Union, allow me to say, is almost absent as a security player on the island. And I explain. The assets of the island, its unmatched geopolitical position. What are the assets? The land, the airspace, the sea zones are dominated by powers that are outside the European Union. There has been already a reference to Turkish provocations by a former colleague who spoke earlier, and Turkey is a regional, growing into a global power that is challenging the monopoly over the use of the island of the UK, the United Kingdom, which has been the traditional strong player on the island. How is that so? Well, the UK has retained extraterritorial rights, so to speak, over the land, the airspace, and the sea zones of the island through the Treaty of Establishment of the Republic of Cyprus of 1960, which is a treaty which resembles more to a SOFA, to a status of forces agreement for the British forces on the island, as opposed to a Bill of Rights for the Cypriots themselves. So through this Treaty of Establishment, seconded by the Treaty of Guarantee and the Treaty of Alliance, the three treaties that established the Republic of Cyprus, Britain had the strong hand. It has retained two sovereign base areas on the south of the island, unique in their status, unique in the rights that they exercised, the British forces in Cyprus over the island. I stress, not only land, but also the sea zones and importantly, the airspace. Let me point out that the FIR Nicosia is very large. It's several times the size of the island. The British Air Force has rights to use the airspace. The Treaty of Establishment says with reference, with consultation with the Cypriot government, that never happens. So Britain has been the traditional dominant power in the space of Cyprus, the wider space of the island. And as we all know, Britain has chosen to exit the European Union. That's why I'm saying powers outside the EU have the dominant role over the use of the island for projecting power. This monopoly of the UK has, which by the way, let me stress that through the integrated review of the UK published in London, this is in the public domain in March of this year, on the 17th of March, it is envisaged that the bases, the British bases on the island, these unique sovereign base areas, as they are called, are going to be upgraded in the context of the UK promoting its role, global Britain, as an independent player, independent of the EU. Now, this British monopoly has been now moving into a direction of a duopoly, in the sense that Turkey is also upgrading its military facilities on the island through the illegal occupation of the northern 37% of the island. Let me underline the fact that Turkish forces amounting to 40,000 troops, 300 tanks, 650 pieces of artillery are scattered around more than 160 locations in northern Cyprus, the territory of the so-called self-styled Turkish Republic of Northern Cyprus. Importantly, on top of what I have just referred to, Ankara has established a drone space. The colleague that referred to Turkish provocations earlier has also, I think, referred to the important role of drones in the war between Armenia and Azerbaijan in Nagorno-Karabakh. The role of Turkish drones was very, very decisive for the victory of the Azeris. And now, as of December of 2019, so it's coming up exactly to 2 years now, Ankara has established a drones base in northern Cyprus, in an airfield with its Greek name, original Greek name, Lefkoniko. Now it's called something else in Çeçitkale in Turkish. This is another dimension of a security issue that Greek place names have been Turkified in the northern part of the island, and clearly Turkey is now using the northern part of the island to project power further afield in the context of the blue homeland, the Mavi Vatan, dominating the seas. And the use of the drone base has repercussions, has an impact on the wider mission, on the wider region, we need to also to note that Turkey is acquiring new batteries of the S-400 missiles from Russia that disturbs the strategic balance in the Middle East. Let me say in this context that, well, last September, I had to press the point that the voice of Cyprus should be heard in the context of the network of independent think tanks of the European Union representatives in Brussels, in a consultative meeting that we held in Brussels regarding the strategic balance in the Middle East and missile programs, which was totally focused on what missile programs Israel has and what missile programs Iran has, the balance between the missiles arsenals between Iran and Israel, and Turkish missile programs were just completely out of the equation. I raised my voice, I made my points, and in the end, as an annex, I was given an invitation in presence, and that was my last in physical presence participation in the context of the EU independent think tanks on disarmament and non-proliferation studies consultative meeting in Brussels, where I stressed exactly the points that I just underlined now. We have a unique paradox here. It is we have European Union absence or let's say a limited presence through a few policemen and policewomen of Frontex that are sent over to the island. But the powers that use strategically Cyprus at the moment are outside of the European Union. And I think this puts a question mark as to the future role of the EU in the region. And I just leave it at that. We may continue with the sea zones. Any questions, I'm happy to address.
So thank you so much. Next on our list is Rear Admiral Demetrios Tsalis from the Greece. Admiral, Demetrios, floor is yours, sir.
Thank you very much. I wish to thank you, all of you, for inviting me to that conference for Mediterranean Sea. The title of the issue is, of course, extremely general and ambitious. And I understand that you all know, as I showed before, many important things. I will give you some not very original, but special thoughts. And I would like to believe that I will contribute in this way, at least to a debate. Okay, in recent times, we have been following with particular attention, I would say anxiously, what is happening about the future of security in the Mediterranean Sea. Let's see the conflicts and the terrorism that we have in front of us. At the moment, a tension is developing that we want and hope will be diffused, because there is no doubt that the main issue for the interests of all Mediterranean nations, and of course of the defense organization like NATO, and the European Union is to have reliable speakers in the region who are democratically legitimized, politically strong, and who feel able to take great historical and courageous initiatives to overcome the inflexibilities that have been historically formed. The priorities of many Mediterranean nations are driven by ongoing and potential conflicts within and immediately outside their borders. As before, the speakers before say, Syria and Libya are sinking in a civil war, while the remaining North African countries and those of Europe face internal and external terrorism threats of varying degrees. Israel is troubled by threats ranging from the existential Iran to the merely deadly Hamas. Both the Israel-Palestine question and the speaker before from Cyprus said the de facto partition of Cyprus as Turkey occupies and claims a portion of that otherwise independent island, a nation of European Union, stand out as the type of contrary, generations-old issues that have collected regional and global attention for decades and are continuing into the new century. In the Mediterranean Sea, new conflicts are combined with old ones rather than simply replacing them. All of these situations and threats have significant maritime elements. In terms of terrorism, the Islamic State has stoked fears of attacks on maritime traffic throughout the Mediterranean. Regional powers have also been using their naval forces to forward national objectives. Israel has maintained a controversial naval blockade of the Gaza Strip since 2007 as a protective measure against weapons smuggling and sea-based rocket attacks, while the country's strong defense these maritime tactics as a necessary protection against illicit Hamas activities. The blockade is also controversial and widely criticized. Turkey added to tension in the region by sending naval forces to accompany gas exploration vessels operating without permission inside the exclusive zones of Cyprus and Greece. That move, of course, drew to anger of Hellenism at all, but also for many European countries and, of course, the United States of America. Great power competition, too, looms huge over that area. Russian interest, ranging from hegemony in the border Black Sea to support of the Assad regime, have ensured its continued status as a major antagonist to Europe. Russia has kept a flotilla deployed as part of its reconstituted Mediterranean squadron. It's about 10 ships, a move that has been explained by Moscow as a response to European strategic missile defense and the guarantor of maritime access to both regional trading partners and to Suez, Gibraltar, and the maritime zones beyond. The country's aggression and the flexibility in its near abroad, like in Baltic, in Georgia, Ukraine, to include cyber attacks activities, figures prominently in the calculations of European Union and NATO member states. But also, let's see, Turkey-Russia relations that are a puzzle to many in the West. Central to the relationships is its bilateral nature, of course. Relations between Ankara and Moscow are based on the mutual recognition of security interests. The resulting dynamics have shaped Turkish-Russian cooperation since 1990s and can be observed in the current partnership in Syria. Mutual regards for the other security concerns is facilitated by the prospect of collaborative projects that promise greater advantages than that continued conflict. Trust is of secondary importance, as is the quality of personal relations between the Turkish and Russian presidents. More important is the interdependence between Russia and Turkey. The potential for confrontation or cooperation between Ankara and Moscow in regional conflicts depends on current priorities rather than past disputes. Their form and the extent of their collaboration are determined not by which side of the conflict they are on, but by their respective motives. Perhaps nowhere are international tensions brought more into focus than at narrow maritime straits, and the Mediterranean remains uniquely bounded in by such choke points. The Suez Canal is precariously situated next to the Sinai Peninsula, where significant terrorist activity remains a problem. An Islamic State-affiliated group claims the Sinai as a province of its Iraq and Syria-based state, and along with other contacts, frequent attack on a variety of targets in the area. While such threats are far less likely to affect either the eastern or western entrances of the Mediterranean, lingering political issues highlight the continuousness of maritime straits. For instance, everybody remembers the tensions built to the point of leading some to speculate whether Turkey could or would close the Straits Dardanelles Bosporus to Russian ships. But also to the west, Spain and United Kingdom continue to argue over territorial rights in the vicinity of Gibraltar. The range and diversity of these tensions, and of course the responses to them, are instructive as they include the full range of threats and actors likely to be confronted elsewhere in the future. Should terrorist groups raid into maritime attacks in the Mediterranean, it will provide insight into likely tactics and capabilities for attempts further fields. The maneuvers and decisions of the antagonists in the Israel-Palestine, Cyprus-Turkey, and Greek-Turkey situations could be replicated in places like in South China Sea. And why not the Taiwan Strait? In the same way, Russian naval activity in and around the Mediterranean provides a preview of how other world powers may look to preserve their interest against the strike of balance of power in the coming years. As ship grows in size and seaborne trade increases in order to cater to the export from newly opened and newly contributing economies, strategic choke points such as the Suez Canal, Gibraltar Strait, and the Bosphorus Strait will become even more critical. Responsible actors will need to strengthen multinational agreements and norms that recognize the absolute right to strait passage. Moreover, we will likely need to establish and exercise internationally accepted and expected responses to attempts to deny that right. For example, from Panama to Malacca Strait and in Hormuz Straits, the ability to prevent or respond to actions to shut down maritime choke points through presence, partnerships, and good governance will be paramount. Of course, another big problem is the mass migration. Over 1 million refugees crossed the Mediterranean towards Europe from 2014, with the vast amount of number in 2015 until now. Most fleeing violence and unrest throughout the Middle East and Africa. Indeed, the situation rose to the level of an outright humanitarian crisis, with nearly more than 5,000 individuals dying on the perilous crossing. Yes? May I continue? Okay. The Mediterranean crisis provides a testament to the likelihood that desperate migrants will continue to risk their lives at sea, and that developed nations will continue to face great difficulties managing their responses. Multilateral plans of mass migration contingencies and rapid humanitarian responses are already in place for many nations across the world. Continually updating and exercising such plans will an emphasis of interoperability with international partners will remain important. Common expectations, shared goals, and appropriate authorities and capabilities will help international coalitions worldwide avoid the failures like Frontex. Below the seabed, the Mediterranean likewise holds resources that must be both pursued and protected, of course. Libya offshore oil field is among one of the largest in the Mediterranean, meaning that a massive economic and energy asset sits vulnerable just offshore of a failed state. Insurgents have routinely target land-based petroleum facilities. So Greece, Israel, Cyprus, and Egypt's offshore gas fields border closely enough that joint developments is under consideration a currently placed balance for a potentially continuous issue. Okay, it is easy to assume that the special relationship with our allies and partners will last forever, can deepen further, and that closer alignment is therefore only natural. But there is nothing inevitable about it. Yes, every Mediterranean nation needs each other more than it did before due to the revisionist policies in this region. But that does not mean there is no gamble in this new vision for any power aligned more closely with that of NATO's, at least since the end of the Cold War. And all allied peacemakers should remember that even a closer alliance is not the same thing as obedience. A comprehensive review of our strategy as the opposing pole of states that provide conflicts and terrorism could be taken in the coming years, even if they conflict with the allied of corporate interests. With Turkey and terrorist organizations aiming toward the antithesis of an open world, the maritime cooperation should support our efforts as a pole of power in the region. If we can help to prepare this new strategy successfully in this regard, it is also important as it is estimated to reap benefits for the whole world. An alliance of Mediterranean nations, Greece, Cyprus, Egypt, France, Israel, Italy, and Spain must work together towards our ambition in 2021 and the next year, of course, to renew, revitalize, and retool for a decade ahead the most powerful democratic community in Northern history in Mediterranean basin. With the East Med Accord, we'll once again have a committed Mediterranean security plan as we try to do. After years of mistrust, recrimination, and division, the bridge across the naval power should be built back better, and we must do that together. But it would be a dangerous mistake to think that the result of an accord alone will repair the violations that the threat tries to build. Each Mediterranean nation cannot simply rebuild the ties of a peaceful region if we are to succeed in meeting today's challenges. The geopolitics has not stood still. A more confident and stable Libya after this Brotherhood war, an aggressive Turkey, resurgent authoritarianism, and the existential threat of a competitive power present our nations with new and grave challenges. The trans-Mediterranean relationship must be rebuilt and reimagined. Our institutions must be strengthened. As we embrace sea power, we must rethink its approach to some fundamental issues. The task is urgent. Our nations need a more powerful naval force alliance to drive a new agenda. With vision and hard work, a new aeronautical alliance for the trans-Mediterranean community is possible. joining in common action, a more committed force with a more self-reliant and capable aeronautical joint task force.
Admiral, we have 1 more minute, please, because you speak 20 minutes. So please make conclusion.
Okay,
Thank you.
I'm finished now. It will give us security and prosperity for the way life. Closing that, conclusively, I would say to do so, we must rededicate ourselves to 3 strategic goals for the year ahead. First, to rebuild the bonds of trust at the heart of Navy power and revitalize security. Second, to commit to a joint strategy to meet the challenges and defend liberalism. And the third is to transform our military, technological, and economic capacity to be the most effective force for freedom at sea, according to the United Nations Connections on the Law of Sea. Thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you, Admiral. Thank you so much. Next on our list actually is a speaker. It's Dr. Gordan Akrap from the Institute for the Hybrid Warfare from Croatia, and his subject is hybrid threats in Mediterranean 2015 to 2030. Dr. Gordan, floor is yours, sir.
I hope that you can hear me now. Okay, thank you very much. Thank you, Darko. Thank you, John. Sorry, I have to do something briefly. Well, I will try to be short as much as I can because we are already at 1600 hours. I would like to share briefly with the screen. John, can you make me able that I can share the screen? Because it's going to be much faster and much easier.
Okay. I did it, Gordon.
Okay, thank you. I hope that you can see it. Darko, can you see this, the window?
Yes, we can see it.
Okay, thank you very much. So thank you very much to all of you. It's first, I know that we are going to learn a lot, especially those of us who are not directly connected with these areas, because this is extremely important experience to meet these people and meet these experts and hear different opinions. And what Darko and I and what Shlomo and I, when we started this Agri Security Forum, it's not just about the exchange of experience, knowledge and ideas, it's about networking, because at the end, what I'm going to say, it's all about the networking, that only networking with the relevant factors and actors can be helpful in order to find the solutions that are going to be sustainable in order to manage the present and future crisis and trying to find the solutions that are going to be acceptable and long-lasting especially in fighting the modern threats. As you can see it in this map, I just tried to briefly show you how many, by my opinion, we have a significant area of crisis and conflicts in this Mediterranean area. My personal opinion is that the Black Sea cannot be divided from the Mediterranean area because it's connected not just with the Marmara Sea, it's connected with lots of different interests and political activities. As you can see, Middle East, North Africa, and the West Balkan Sea countries, together with Ukraine and Crimea, is one of the quite a lot of those challenging areas that we have to be faced with. We know, especially you, our colleagues and friends from the Greece, we know that the Mediterranean is a cradle of modern civilization, but also it's cradle of quite a lot of conflicts and wars, past, present, and futures. We have one of the terms that is coined recently in the 20th century, term Balkanization. That means the solution of the multi-ethnic and multinational empires in the bloody conflicts. We saw it in the middle of 20th century, and then at the end of the 20th century with the bloody dissolution of former Yugoslavia. What we can see I will try to briefly remind you to the influence operations and violence that happens with the Arab Spring, malicious influence on the election, political, economic, social media and energy meddlings and influences in this area, domestic and international terrorism, intensive organized crime activities, and intensive, especially in the COVID time, disinformation successes, because it's not a question that disinformations are present. The problem is, especially in the COVID times, that disinformations are very successful in turning the quite a large part of the population against the governments, against the social interests, against the health, against the, I would like to say the reasonable mind, but this is my personal opinion. When I said the Arab Spring, this is a briefly shown up how it looked like. This is a time frame, how it was done. As you can see, so many different violence activities, riots, protests, and even coup d'etats that were done in several countries. These are the results. And I mentioned that because this is one of the things that were done and introduced and conducted by using the quite a different activities that we together consider as a part of the hybrid threats what Shlomo spoke before. Illegal migrations from 2015, we know that Turkey used it as a weapon of political influence, exactly what the Belarusian Lukashenko is doing, trying to do now, but the situation is completely different. In 2015, Europe was divided according to this topic, but now European Union is completely together and very strong and have a one unique position, and I think Lukashenko is going to have a problem. These are the several routes that illegal migrants try to use, and we saw that so many different problems, political, economic, social, religious, ethnic, and any other problems that those illegal migrants wave from Turkey make in the European countries. But one of the most important results, malicious result, is the rise of the populism. This is the rise of the number of the migrants in this area. But as we can see, the elections in Europe that were in 2015 and 2016 resulted in a rise of the populist parties that rise social divisions, extremism, violence, and differences in order that the values and the beliefs and principles that European Union was made of came completely in a question. This is, as you can see, how many different populist parties and radical parties from the far right went to the power in different countries in the European Union. And this is one of the most important malicious and negative influences after these illegal migrants wave, but not only about those things. What Shlomo also mentioned and what Darko mentioned, they are the previous speakers, are the energy crisis. The activities of Turkey and their connections with Libya in trying to misuse the opportunity and connections across the Greek territory, their aggressive activities against the Cyprus, Greece, and French exploratory ships in the area of Cyprus is going to be one of the main problems, not just for the Mediterranean, it's going to be for EU and NATO member countries. This is something that we are talking about, and it should be done, what a colleague from Cyprus said, not just to the think tanks, it should be done, and I think, as far as I know from the European Union and European Commission, they are very aware of the Turkish aggressive activities in this area in order to destabilize this situation. Also, what I mentioned are the West Balkan 6 countries, though we are quite familiar with this area, and Darko are witnessing every day that how many situations in different countries are very complex, very sensitive, and very turbulent, and it has a enormous potential for widening the malicious influences, not just to this area and to the European Union. For example, in West Balkan 6 countries, we have a malicious internal influences, foreign influences by China, Russia, Turkey, and different Arab countries, and conflicts and violence are based on political, religious, ethnic, national, social, ideological motives supported by organized crime. When you have so many vectors of attacks and vectors of crisis, it's very hard to manage those crises, especially when we are talking about the states and societies that are still not yet developed, especially not in a democratic way. Also, as I said, the Crimea region with Russian activities and aggression against the Ukraine is something that we have to take care about it, because it's a Black Sea, but it's a Mediterranean part of the Mediterranean dialogue. What we can expect by my opinion, we can expect the rise of the complex with the hybrid nature, use different vectors of attacks, rise of violence, rise of malicious foreign interference in political, economical, and electoral processes as a major things what we saw it, for example, in North Macedonia and Montenegro in the last several years. Also, rise of the multipolar social divisions and fissures within one society and group of the societies, like in West Balkan CIS countries. And as a result, we are going to be faced with a lower and lower level of resiliency of society and state. It means they are going to be much easier to be manageable by the foreign actors. Also, rise of the cyber threats, rise of the hybrid threats, and that can easily transform what we saw in Ukraine and Syria in a hybrid warfare. Problems are not going to be limited with territorial boundaries and state borders, and with significant influence of the foreign actors. And one of the key things is going to be rise of the problems and crises that the critical infrastructure are going to be faced within these nations. We saw it in last year when the Israeli water authorities were under the attack by the Iranian cyber attack, and this is a really first time that the cyber attack was used as a terrorist weapon against one society. What to do? First is to fulfilling necessary preconditions for joining EU. That I mean, predominantly for the West Balkan CIS countries, they need to accept organize the societies and the states and accept the mission, values, and beliefs that exist and that they are core of the European Union. Local and regional integrations needs to be based on mutual interest. We have to promote them, just like some kind of the organization that it should be done in the West Balkan countries, initiated by the Serbia, Albania, and North Macedonia, but it needs to be inclusive, not exclusive. Development of the protection of the critical infrastructure, material and non-material. When I said non-material is ideological, identity questions. Also, developed intensive activities on national international cooperation. Then this is one of the things that why I think we need to support the ideas of networking, not just experts like we are and academics. We also need to integrate and try to support and initiate integration of the knowledge, information and knowledge exchange between the owners and managers of the different critical infrastructures from the different countries, and also developing national, international, whole of government and whole of society approach within the circle of trust countries, if I can say that. But we know that, for example, there is a group of the countries in the Mediterranean that really knows where are the problems, and we need to help, for example, to the Greece, to the Cyprus, to Israel, or the other countries that are faced with malicious activities by foreign influence countries or foreign influence non-state actors that are trying to dissolve those futures and their futures and societies. And therefore, I think I'm always an optimist, and I think there is always sun on the window, and there is always a fine view that we can do it, and there is always solution that it can be done, because there is no mission impossible. It's only a time of place, time, and humans and efforts that we need to invest and do in order to bring back the stability and security. Darko, thank you very much. And everybody, if everybody else has any comments and questions, I'm open to them. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Gordon. It was very extensive and nice presentation. Next on our list is Professor Lasha Chantorige. I'm sorry if I did not pronounce this well. From Norwich University, US. His topic is Russia in Mediterranean, a critical power in the region. So, Professor Lasha, floor is yours.
Thank you, Dargo. Thank you, John, for organizing this meeting and allowing me to speak. I will contribute a few of my comments, outline basically design of my paper, and I'm going to elaborate in my written submission to the journal. So my starting point is the role of Russia in the region, in the Mediterranean region. And my argument is that Russia is currently one of the most dominant powers in the region and will remain so next 5 to 10 years. Since 2016, there has been a debate whether Russia has had major presence in the Mediterranean region. Opinions were divided, but now I think most commentators and most experts in the regional affairs agree that Russia will play an important role in regional developments. Why? So I'm going to present three areas of focus that we may want to consider in coming years, and I'm sure you will be watching those areas as well. One is competition among great powers or geopolitical competition. Russia currently has an ambition to be established as the dominant power in Europe. And one of the examples of its growing influence in this power competition is deployment of naval assets, specifically its submarines, very quiet submarines, otherwise known as black holes in the Mediterranean. It rotates these ships 3 to 5 a year. These vessels are armed with caliber cruise missiles capable of carrying nuclear weapons. The advantage of these missiles is that it's pretty much there is no defense against them. If they carry nuclear missiles, any target can be attacked and destroyed. No country can defend itself from this threat. 3 to 5 quiet submarines. These are projects 877 and project 636. 3 to 5 submarines don't sound much, but these 3 to 5 submarines can completely destroy a country like Italy and kill millions of people there. Now, I'm not telling you this to be worried about that Russia is going to launch a massive nuclear attack on Europe, but theoretically it's possible. But at more practical level, Russian handbook of tactical operations, nuclear tactical operations, allows single type nuclear strike against even non-nuclear states. So in practical terms, that is quite possible. As Admiral Tsailis has remarked, one of the important areas to watch in coming years is the control of choke points, navigation choke points, and that in Mediterranean, there's Suez Canal, there is Bosphorus and Dardanelles Straits, and obviously Gibraltar. So the submarines, naval assets, Russian presence in the Mediterranean also allows the country to influence those areas in choke points in coming years. So the range of these missiles, Gordon had circles on his map. So if you imagine somewhere in Mediterranean, 3,000 kilometers, a circle, big circle, those missiles cover the entire continent of Europe. So those are very powerful weapons, and the Russian Federation is planning to increase the number of missiles. Currently, they have 300 submarine launched nuclear capable caliber missiles. The NATO designation is Sizzler, by the way, if you would like to look it up. And it's Moscow is planning to increase the number of missiles to 650, 700 by the end of this decade. So the second area is energy, as a number of speakers have pointed out in previous presentations. And Russia wants to be a dominant player in this field, especially when it comes to European supplies. Europe depends largely on Russian supplied gas and oil. This dependency is going to increase, and that increase comes that dependency will increase as well through the opening of alternative delivering routes of Russian gas to Northern Europe and to Europe in general. An alternative of Russian supplies is Northern Africa, but guess what? Libya, which is one of the wealthiest countries in the region in terms of oil and gas reserves, Libya has Russian mercenaries, Russian troops deployed, and which would play an important role in that country in shaping if conflict ever subsides in Libya, which inevitably will happen. Russia will have an important influence and role in that country through it's one of the warlords currently, Khalifa Haftar, who relies on Russian support, Russian weapons supplies and mercenaries to influence political processes in Libya. Besides Libya, Russia has close ties with Sudan in the Red Sea. They acquired port rights, the rights to base of naval base in Port Sudan, developing close ties with Egypt as well as Lebanon, and you already know port in Syria, Tartus, where Russia has an important naval presence. So in other words, surrounding Europe with Russian-controlled delivery systems or Russian-controlled reserves of oil and gas will be very advantageous for Moscow in strengthening its hand in energy field. The third area to watch and the third topic to have in mind is the conflicts, as also Professor Akrap has noted. Number of frozen or forgotten conflicts in the region can resurface, just like they did at some point in Ukraine and Georgia and elsewhere. One thing to keep in mind, and I'm telling this to my colleagues here in the United States who don't really think this way, for a Russian military security intelligence establishment, conflict is a commodity. Conflict is something that is desirable. You can trade, provided that conflict is outside Russia and in strategically important areas. You can trade with other great powers in terms of state interests. And if it comes to military organizations, generals love conflict, or intelligence directors love conflict because they can advance their career, they can gain something. Mid-level officers and managers love conflict because they can advance their own career as well. So Russia can have hand in the old Balkan conflicts in the Republika Srpska, in Kosovo. They tried their hand in Montenegro and Macedonia since 2016. Didn't go very far, but those are indicators that they are trying. They're testing to see what can be gained and what can be resurrected and restarted. So when you're thinking Russia and conflict, two words, don't think in terms of conflict resolution or gaining land or doing anything that is traditionally understood to be important in areas of conflict. Think of a conflict, whether it's a communal conflict, it's an intrastate conflict or interstate conflict, as a commodity, something that Russia can use to advance its own national interests. So in essence, these three areas are important for Russia, not only in the Mediterranean, but in generally most everywhere around the world. Mediterranean is interesting because we've seen increase in Russian activity in the region, and this is going to be this trend is going to be continuing in coming years. I'm talking between 5 and 10 years because Russian leadership is not forever, thankfully. And while Mr. Putin is in power, this trend is likely to progress. After Putin leaves this world, God knows, we'll see. But for now, this is a very, very delicate and very very hard thing to to consider as either. I don't want to predict a war or disaster or even a regional conflict, but this is a very sensitive region for Europe and for the rest of the world. Thank you.
Thank you, Lassa, so much. Exactly on the time. So next on our speak is Dr. Shaul Shai. His topic is energy as a source of conflict and cooperation in East Mediterranean. Dr. Shai, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Darko. I would like to relate to a more specific area of the energy as a source of conflict and cooperation. And I have to say that the East Mediterranean region, unfortunately, is a conflict-rich region. I don't know what we have more, conflicts or energy. But anyway, I would like to relate, first of all, to the characteristics of the conflict. And we have to take in consideration, and I think that Dr. Akrap related to it before, that as a result of the so-called Arab Spring, the geostrategic structure of the East Mediterranean or the Middle East has been changed. And one of the main results of this change is that there is a competition over the hegemony in this region between three main parties. One is Iran, and later on I will relate to it regarding the energy in the East Mediterranean region. The second is Turkey, and the third is a kind of Sunni Arab coalition that Egypt is the leading force in this group. But in general terms, I can say that as a result of the Arab Spring, the traditional Arab group that was dominant in the Middle East for decades is much weaker. And if we look at the map, at least 5 of the Arab countries are considered today as more or less failed states. Starting in the west with Libya, following with Yemen, going north to Lebanon, Syria, and Iraq. So in this new geostrategic structure, we have to understand how different players are operating regarding the conflict about energy. So the energy conflicts in the region are relatively new. Let's say that 2 decades ago, it was non-issue. Very simply because it was before the discovery of huge gas fields in the Mediterranean, so it was less important. But since then, these conflicts over the energy, which almost always are about the maritime borders or the so-called exclusive economic zones of the countries, and accordingly the drilling rights. This is the issue that the different conflicts that I will mention pretty soon are about. But we have to take in consideration that these energy conflicts are coming on top of almost always previous and much deep-rooted conflicts between the different players. So if I have to map briefly the main energy conflicts in the East Mediterranean region, the first one is between Israel and Lebanon about the demarcation of the maritime border. The second is between Turkey and Cyprus, and I will not repeat what our colleague from Cyprus already said about the Turkish occupation of the northern part of the island, and of course the Turkish influence in the region and around Cyprus. The third conflict is between Turkey and Greek, and again, it's an all-rooted conflict that, of course, has its new energy parts as an updated part of a long conflict between the two countries. And the fourth conflict is about the agreement between Turkey and the so-called the GNA, the internationally recognized government in Libya, which is practically divided into two parts. So this part of Libya signed an agreement with Turkey regarding the demarcation of the maritime border, and the result is that practically the border between Libya and Turkey is somewhere in the middle of the Mediterranean, with all the consequences of such a kind of map regarding exclusive economic zone and, of course, drilling rights. So we can see at least 4 conflicts that are directly related to disputes over energy. And of course, they are a part of much deeper and wider conflict. And I will give you just 2 examples to explain it. If we look at the Israeli-Lebanese dispute regarding the maritime border, of course, Israel has much longer problems with Lebanon, with 2 wars that Israel fought in Lebanon in '82 and in 2006. And this initiative to try to solve the dispute over the maritime border that is initiated and supported both by the United States and the UN, it's working only formally, because after 4 or 5 rounds of talks, it reached a dead end. And if I look at the probability that the dispute will be solved, it's almost impossible to be optimistic for several reasons. First of all, I think that all of you are aware to the internal political and economic crisis in Lebanon. Lebanon has no functioning government for almost 3 years. And of course, even now, there is no accepted and functioning government. So there is no partner to talk with. And to talk, it's possible, but of course, not to solve the problem and to sign any contract. But the main problem regarding Lebanon is Hezbollah. And it's bringing us back to the regional conflict over hegemony. Hezbollah is a part of the Iranian strategy, and it's the Lebanese branch that's representing the Iranian interests. And the Iranian interests are, of course, not to solve problems with Israel, but to maintain or create problems for Israel. So the probability to solve this maritime conflict, of course, is not in high probability, in understatement, in the near future. If we look, for instance, to another conflict in Libya, I think that in this case, there are additional players that are deeply involved, and I think that the previous speaker mentioned already the Russian involvement in Libya and the Russian interests. But even if we look just to 2 key players in the regional conflict. I mean, Turkey on one hand and Egypt on the other hand, we can see that they have totally different interests. Egypt is supporting General Haftar, Turkey is supporting the GNA, and both are involved by supporting the military opposing forces in the civil war in Libya. So the probability to reach a kind of agreement between the two parties, again, is not realistic. So far, I spoke about the pessimistic parts of the energy in the region, but on the other hand, we have as well some positive developments. And I think that one of them that reflects the significant change in the geostrategic structure of the region is the new formed, the East Mediterranean Gas Forum that was formed in Egypt. Egypt is hosting this, this new organization. And when we look at the members of the group, it's Egypt, it's Israel, it's Greece, Cyprus, Italy, Jordan, and the Palestinian Authority. So the goal of this new organization is, of course, to improve the relations between the participants and to work together in order to promote the interests of all the East Mediterranean countries. And if I look at the potential developments in the future, one huge project is, of course, the pipeline from East Mediterranean to Europe. And Israel, Egypt, Greece, and Cyprus all will be part of this project, of course, with investments of external participants. Another area of cooperation is exploration of oil and gas in the region. And the third is the marketing of liquefied gas, and Egypt is going to be the hub of this industry. And Israel already is selling gas to Egypt, not for their need, because they, after finding the Zohr gas field there, they reached independence regarding energy, but they are going to export it both to Europe and, for instance, to Jordan, and maybe in the future to Syria and Lebanon. So we can see at the same time that we have significant threats to the stability, some initiatives that, if they will succeed, will contribute to the stability
So one more minute, please.
of the region.
I'm sorry, one more minute, please.
Thank you. It's over.
Thank you, sir, so much. Exactly on time. So it was great pleasure to listen to your presentation. So next on the list is, of course, one of our hosts and this distinguished professor, brother and friend, Professor John Nomikos from Research Institute of American and European Studies from Greece. His topic is Greece and France and India Eastern Mediterranean Security Alliance. So, Professor Nomikos, the floor is yours, sir.
Thank you, Darko. It's always very happy to see and to listen to this excellent presentation. I will just share with you some of my comments related to the Greece, France, and India development in the Eastern Mediterranean. First of all, you know, Greece in particular has been in Turkey's side for decades. Erdogan, like everybody said, more or less is an authoritarian leader that blackmailed the European Union member state by threatening to transfer millions of illegal migrants to destabilize the European society. He said that last week too. Well, on the other side, on October 7th, which is the positive one, in 2021, Greece and France signed a defense agreement along with an supplementary defense agreement with the United States of America, which is really quite important, not only for the safety of Greece in the region, but also for the Balkans, Mediterranean, and Cyprus, and of course for the security and safety of the Jewish state in Israel. Well, Greek Department of Defense has purchased a French airplane, Rafale, and is looking forward, to 3 French Belhara, frigates. That reminds me sometimes, the so-called, if we can say the Mediterranean alliances between the countries in the region, like Professor Scholl discussed it previously. Well, between Greece and Turkey in the Aegean, and also steering a lot of attention in the Mediterranean water because of the energy exploration, and of course impacted a lot of economic and political dynamics nowadays. If we go now to Indo-Pacific, we see what's happening with the United States when they signed the AUKUS, the Australian United Kingdom outside, the European Union, and the state has shifted a lot, the strategic strategy or direction from Washington, D.C. to the Indo-Pacific. And of course, France is trying to participate in the Southeast Asian by developing collaboration with New Delhi in France. All right, so we can see that France right now is upgrading its position not only in the Mediterranean, but also in the Indo-Pacific with the green light, if I can say that, of the White House in the region. Of course, you realize India is not a small country. It's more than 1.4 billion democratic state. It has excellent collaboration with the Jewish state, in Jerusalem. Even the Jewish lobby, has an office in New Delhi. So that means, Israeli and Indian worship are taking a lot of, activities, nowadays. So this is a good, window for Greece and France to collaborate, not only Greece, France, and India, but Egypt, Cyprus, and Israel to come together and to create the so-called a Mediterranean alliances. Another thing that is quite important, and I think is recommended because, as you all know, coming from the security and the intelligence community, India and France has a lot to offer by exchange information. All right, India is a huge state. They have a very good eye what's going on in the region, Pakistan, Kashmir, Afghanistan, China. So he's there. He knows exactly what's going on. And the Indian intelligence service, the so-called RAW, is one of the best in the area. So if we see about the issues that they are facing now, extremism, drugs trafficking, money laundering, organized crime, I think Indian intelligence community can assist European state, United States, Canada, North Africa, Middle East, and the Gulf state, especially the United Arab Emirates, Bahrain, Saudi Arabia, to have at least a channel of exchange of information, because intelligence is the best remedy or tool, to prevent things that they are coming. Now, 2 days ago, we see, on the open sources that financial crisis and social turmoil in Pakistan, Turkey, and Afghanistan could spill over terrorist incident in Southeast Asia, in Caucasus, in Middle East too, of course, in Europe through the Balkan Peninsula, and the International Monetary Fund, was really negative to to support financially or to give any loan to Pakistan. And you can imagine how this is going to affect the Pakistani, society. A strong security and defense coordination among Greece, France, and India is the best, I think, equation for fighting or combating asymmetric warfare. Now, the Turkish, allow me to say that the Turkish-Pakistan axis immerses a distinct terrorist threat to both Greece, France, and India, making cooperation a natural outcome of the desire to safeguard not only their own individual interests, but also international stability and security. Now, in Greece, the biggest migrant, community is Pakistan. We have more Pakistanis in Greece. Number two is Afghani. And the India community is one of the best. You never heard on the Greek news. They are hardworking men. They have their own, food store like the Greeks in diaspora. And you never hear any kind of crime about India. But Pakistani controls with the Kosovar and the Albania and the Turkish, the drugs trafficking coming all the way from Afghanistan through Pakistan is moving, to Turkey. From Turkey goes to the Balkan. Pakistan is there. It has its own presence, all right? With, of course, the mobs that coming from the Kosovars, all right? Now, Turkish-Pakistani relation is a national security threat for Greece, France, and India, as well as for the Jewish state. And both countries, appear aggressively in the Mediterranean. Now, I don't want to mention to you that the Turkish airline has a very cheap, air ticket from Somalia, from Sudan, bringing people almost free of charge to Istanbul, and from Istanbul they can go wherever they come. They come to Greece, they go to Belarus, they go everywhere. So Turkish Airlines is becoming like a cargo to bring, people all over Europe. It works like a human trafficking airline company, and of course that provides a lot of funding, for the Turkish state. One thing that really worries me is the strong collaboration between the Turkish intelligence service and the Pakistani intelligence service, between MIT from the Turkish point of side and ISI from the Pakistani, side. And this is not something new. I mean, it's an open secret. All right, Pakistani attempt to destabilize Kashmir with support of Turkey, and Pakistan is used as a proxy state to support Turkey on the occupied Turkish land in the northern part of Cyprus. I'm sure, my colleagues from Cyprus would probably know that because, from Antalya and from Istanbul, fly by Turkish airline goes to the, to the outpost in the occupied area. And now the Turkish, the Greeks, Cyprus, Cyprus is a member of the EU, find out yet that many migrants, coming through Turkey, the occupied area of Turkey, all the way to Nicosia. And this is a big, huge state because Lebanon is doing the same, and the Hezbollah is pushing them to come to Cyprus too. The transfer now, this is another problem that I want to say. The transfer of nuclear expertise to Turkey is also a national security threat for Greece, but especially for the Jewish state. Can you imagine to have a Akuya who is supposedly, they try to build, a nuclear reactor, very close to Israel and to Greece. And you possibly know this area there in Akuya is a place that if we have an earthquake tomorrow, the whole situation is going to blow up. So the Turks, are really make a suicide, situation there. And of course, the United States, the European Union, and Greece, Cyprus, and Israel should take care of it. Finally, USA, France must allow Pakistan to, to stop transfer of this expertise. The idea is not new for Greece and France and India. we are as a stabilizing factor in the Eastern Mediterranean, and India agreed to coordinate in battling terrorism and piracy in the maritime sector in the Indian Ocean, where Greek ocean, Greek-owned shipping industry is having a serious problem. The Indian, foreign minister stressed that India considered Greece a strategic partner, and he came to Greece after 18 years. Finally, I would probably want to say that in the last month, India workshop have already visited Egypt, Israel, and hopefully, I hope, the India workshop will come to Greece. In 2017, visit a 4 India workshop to the Greek military naval base in Souda, in the island of Crete. And of course, that was one of the most exciting things between Greece and the Indian Navy, which is, I hope, is going to repeat it, even though in Greece we have no Indian military attaché. And the Research Institute for European American Studies, which I'm directed, we are doing a lot of work, unilaterally sometimes, to persuade India think tank to have an Indian military attaché here. And I had the chance, a few weeks ago to visit the Greek Department of Defense and to raise the issues that an India and the Greek military attaché should go to New Delhi, vice versa, and to Athens, because without a military attaché, it's extremely hard, to develop defense and security issues. Finally, we to conclude my short analysis, Chairman, Mr. Professor Darko, by informing you that our group, RIEAS, we have signed it, a memorandum of understanding with the Global Counterterrorism Council, which is based in New Delhi, and we participate in a lot of activities there. And we had the opportunity, to participate in a conference about human trafficking from Southeast Asia, organized crime and extremism, organized by the India Foundation in Jaipur. So just to conclude and to be on time, I think that India, France, Cyprus, of course, Egypt, and India, included the Jewish state, Israel, should collaborate together and to have, a Mediterranean alliances. And 3-4 days ago, France and Italy signed it, and a defense agreement. And this is a very optimistic option to see, that the Mediterranean Union is there, which is one of the best, medicine for stability in the Eastern Mediterranean. Thank you, Professor Darko.
Thank you, Professor Nomikos. Just a small comment, and definitely we will leave the space for Q&A on the end. I don't think that France have a lot of lucky, because definitely 2 contracts was cancelled to France because of the, let's say, role of President Macron, that it is not welcomed by United States, definitely. So the next on our list is Professor Swaran Singh. Is it Professor with us? I did not saw him. Is he Professor? Does he here with us? Or Professor Swaran is not with us. Maybe it's too late in India. The next on our speak, it is my great pleasure to announce Dr. Tal Pavel, Director and co-founder of the Institute of Cyber Policy and Studies from Israel. His subject is cybersecurity threats in Mediterranean. And Dr. Tal will give us a power presentation. Dr. Tal, floor is yours, sir.
Thank you very much. Good afternoon, good evening, everyone. Thank you for the invitation and the opportunity to take part in this very interesting and respectful event, and to shed light on a different topic that relates to security in the Mediterranean, and it's cyber threats and cyber terrorism, and especially how does a terrorist organization use the cyberspace in order to perform physical traditional physical traditional terrorist activities. Do you see my presentation well?
Yes.
Yes.
Marvelous. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Well, cybersecurity threat in the Mediterranean from the cyberterrorism perspective. We know that there is a life cycle of an attack, a cyber attack or physical attack. Of course, there are much more stages that than we can see here, but there is the preparation, the attack, and the exploitation, and of course we miss here the documentation, which is very important nowadays. You know, to terrorize, to create terror, we need the documentation. The first stage is the call, which means what is the agenda? We need to spread the call. And we can see just few examples of here terrorists told to hijack social media accounts to spread propaganda. We know that there's organization in the Middle East knew how to use media organizations and media kit. As you can see, almost a decade and a half ago. This came from Iraq. Global media, Global Islamic Media Front is supposed to be the media organization of the Islamic of Al-Qaeda. We can see that banners, posters that are published by Islamic State here after the attacks on Brussels and Paris. And another issue is spreading the ideological motives, ideological guidance. Just one example, there was a Facebook group under the name of Islamic State Scholars, in which you can post questions and raise questions to the allegedly Islamic State scholars and to receive relevant answers and perhaps fatwas according to Islamic State perspectives and ideology. Another interesting issue is the mobilization. And as you can see from just few examples, Islamic State knew how to mobilize and how to recruit those youngsters, even using Vibers and social networks all around the world, as you can see here in the US as well. They also published, as written here, training guide on how to tweet safely without giving out your location to NSA. Such sophistication. When we arrived to funding, well, there were claims that ISIS, Islamic State, hold in the past Bitcoin wallets, such in this case of Paris attackers had $3 million funding using Bitcoins. How do they use it, whether it's true or false? I must admit that I don't know, but well, this is a claim. And we know that there was also a campaign by Hamas in Gaza. This is in Arabic, and it's published by the Izzeddin Qassam Cyber Brigade, Izzeddin Qassam Brigade, that they publish here the official Bitcoin wallet and the address of this wallet in order that the supporters may support them also by raising funds. Interesting thing in this case, in the case of Boko Haram in Nigeria, is a connection between tourism and crime, traditional crime. And in this case, we see allegations of correlations and connectivity between crime and terrorism, between Nigerian sting that we already know for several decades, and cyber crime and cyber tourism, in this case, cyber physical terrorism of Boko Haram. We saw several campaigns of please donate us in order that we will be able to buy those rifles, ammunition, snipers, rifles, AK-47, RPG, and so on and so forth. So we saw such campaigns in social networks. Another stage in the life cycle of physical terrorist activities is the operational training. We know done well from the history, this guide of how to survive in the West, a Mujahid guide, with chapter like hiding the extremist identity, breaking alliance, transporting weapons, bomb making, the jihad beginning, and escaping for safety. A truly comprehensive from side to side, the guide of how to survive, how a Mujahid can survive in the West and can fight easily. Two interesting periodicals published, this one by AQAP, Al-Qaeda in Arabian Peninsula. It was inspired, was the name, and it was published something like around 14, 15 issues during a period of 4 or 5 years. And as you can see in here, how to make a bomb in the kitchen of your mind by Al-Qaeda chef, and breaching airport security, field tactics, making the hidden bomb, and so on and so forth. Another one was The Beak, a periodical, in this case, of Islamic State, and as you can see in here, very, very professional one. Here again, something like no more than 15 issues that were published. Interesting one was Kybernetic, an allegedly cyber magazine that there were only 2 issues of this one. Although it's in German, but you can see here Asrar 2. Asrar is the Arabic name of the encryption program PGP, pretty good privacy, and they made Arabization of this PGP encryption software, and they call it the secrets of the Mujahideen. Asrar al-Mujahideen, and this is the name, you know, as you can see here, version number 2. When we are dealing with communication means of those terrorists, one of the interesting and perhaps notorious case is the Nairobi attack by Al-Shabaab from Somalia. There was a mall, Westgate mall in Kenya, Nairobi, that was attacked by Al-Shabaab from Somalia. And the interesting thing is that during the attack that lasts more than 24 hours, they tweeted the events. And as you can see here, this was the official Twitter account of Al-Shabaab from Somalia. Of course, later on, or soon, it was deleted, this account. But as you can see in a Nairobi shopping mall attack, Al-Shabaab Twitter account suspended. But you can see here the tweets during the attack. So the usage of social media platform, in this case Twitter, to tweet from ground exactly as things happen. There was a claim by Ministry of Interior of Belgium that Islamic State activists even use PlayStation in order to communicate between themselves in secrecy. It is a very interesting claim that they use PlayStation to communicate and perhaps even to have technical guidance operational one. But it's once again emphasized their ability to use the latest technology for the cause. Another example is Zillow, and I must admit that until then I never heard about this application, but this one turns your phone, your cellular phone, into PPT device, which consume less energy. And as can see, they knew this application and they use it in order to perform, in order to enable PPT activity using the cellular phones. We've mentioned encryptions, and here is a guide how to use PGP encryption software, Asrar Mujahideen, the secrets of Mujahideen, which are very detailed explanations. Of course, they use Telegram, and you know, I must admit that it's kind of bizarre to see such posters that guide you where to download, how to install this application of Telegram and how to join them, when we remember that this is not an ordinary media outlet. This is the Telegram channel of Islamic State. It looks very professional, but let us remember that this was the banners and posters to promote the Telegram channel of Islamic State. And as can see here, they operated dozens, hundreds of Telegram channels, and in dozens of languages. And they also have this technical office, Maktaba al-Takniya. Let's call it the technical office for several technical questions, probably. Another issue is that you can see here that ISIS use of Telegram has definitely surpassed Twitter. So back at the end of 2016, not only that they use Twitter, not only that they use Telegram, but the usage of Telegram definitely surpassed the one of Twitter. And that's definitely was the app of choice by ISIS members. But they also created their own applications, cellular applications. This one, Fajr al-Bashair, here, the dawn of the new news, the dawn of the news, which eventually was removed from Google Play, Google App Store. But 2 years later, they created another application, a news application. This was made by Amaq. Amaq was the, or still is the news agency of Islamic State. And once again, it's not an official of nation state. It's not a media outlet of a nation state. It's a media outlet. It's a news agency of a terrorist organization. And they created a news agency and created and distributed this news app. It's always important to bear in mind that at the end of the day, all those latest technologies were used at the hand of this notorious.
2 more minutes.
1 more minute, 2 more minutes.
Two.
Marvelous. Another attempt was to have Facebook, Khilafah Book, their own Facebook. They created also a web browser plugin for 24 hours, 24/7 news updates, once again, from the Amaq news agency. Another topic is the documentation, whether of the shaheeds, the martyrs, in this case by Hamas, and infographics. They knew and how to use, and they publish very detailed infographics, either by Islamic State or Hamas. The last topic is cyber threats. And here there were several entities. The first one was Islamic State Hacking Division, and the second was Cyber Caliphate Army, that later combined into the United Cyber Caliphate. They made several attacks, most of them defacement or leaks, as can see here. Islamic State Hacking Division released address of 100 US military personnel, including pilots, by Abu Hussein al-Brittany. And leaks of Minnesota cops. They made also hacks, in this case, into the Twitter account of US Central Command by a simple social engineering attack, and they posted those tweets in the official Twitter account of US Central Command. They also managed to breach into the Newsweek Twitter account, again by social engineering attack, and defacement attack, in this case against the website of Malaysia Airlines. At the end of the day, when we need to conclude what are the capabilities of those terrorist organizations, and I mean cyber capabilities, as can see here, poor cyber capabilities of those terrorist organizations. And it's important to understand when we're dealing with cyber terrorist organization, terrorist organization cyber capabilities. This paragraph, they said that ISIS never targeted US and European sources through cyber attacks, except for security kiddies level of the facing websites. We do not expect them, nor Boko Haram or Al-Shabaab, to execute real cyber attacks. So at the end of the day, when we're speaking about cyber attacks that can be made by terrorist organizations, physical terrorist organizations, traditional one, it's important to understand that we do not expect to have real cyber attacks that may harm or cripple critical infrastructure of modern state. Thank you very much for your listening and for your time.
Thank you, Tal, so much. We have a situation now that Professor Leventi, Dr. Leventis, he already talked. Professor Dragicic, he is in the National Parliament. And now it's my great pleasure to call Mr. Luca Cincipriani, I hope I pronounce well, from Università Cattolica del Sacro Coro, Milan, Italy. His topic is strategic relevance of the Mediterranean, local instability and international threats. So Luca, first of all, please welcome on behalf of all, and correct me if I pronounce your surname well. So Luca, floor is yours.
Yeah, thank you, Professor. My surname is very complicated in Italian too, so don't worry. Thank you very much, and good afternoon to everybody. Thank you for the opportunity to be here today. I'm trying to share with you a presentation. I hope that that you can see it. Yeah, this is my presentation. The title is Local Instabilities and International Threats. So I will focus mainly on the subject of international terrorism and jihadist terrorism, which is the focus of its time of the research center where I work for, and especially linked to the Mediterranean region, which on an Italian point of view, but sometimes also an European point of view, is mainly assessed as a gateway to Europe. So we are used to think about the Mediterranean region and the area as in terms of migratory processes and migratory flows. And so the idea to defend our coasts or shores. But in terms of security and international terrorism, the Mediterranean region has become more and more relevant in the last years, especially connected to its southern side, which is not just confined to North Africa, as we will see, but the Sahel region too. The shift of the US from the Mediterranean Sea to Asia mainly meant new opportunities for all the new regional powers. We have heard before about the role of France, of Turkey, especially in the region, and how they're trying to develop new power and new interests in the area, thanks to the space left and room left by the US in order to project their power to oust competitors and to create new bonds. So in this scenario, the Mediterranean area becomes interesting because this is effects on the security side and the fight against international terrorism, especially in relation to Africa. We know that Africa has become a sort of incubator of a new jihadist threats, which is completely different or has some differences from the past and from the terrorist threats that we have seen in the Middle East or in Afghanistan, for example. And in this new crisis scenario, we cannot consider the Mediterranean only in terms of Maghreb or North Africa, but we need to consider also the peripheral regions around it. The concept of Deep Maghreb was developed by the NATO Defense College Foundation in order to consider a sort of a new strategic security area with a new strategic depth that is not only confined to the coastal countries, but that includes also and projects its interest towards the Sahel region, the Gulf of Guinea, and so the Atlantic coast, as well as the Red Sea. The European Union too, in its global strategy in 2016, considered the relevance of the Sahel as part of the southern flank, for example, of NATO. And this implies that today the security of the Mediterranean must take into consideration also the Sahel and the peripheral regions. Why? Because first of all, there are porous borders, and there's the possibility to share illicit traffics. There's the possibility to share terroristic threats that find easily the possibility to move around this area and to reach the ports and the shores of North Africa. So in connection to these Deep Maghreb concept, in the last years, we have assisted to the renovated interest by European countries also in developing military operations. We have an example with Operation Barkhane. We have another example with Operation Takuba. The Operation Takuba involves also Italian military troops, as well as Operation Barkhane mainly concerned the French military troops. This interest is linked to the idea that defending the coast is not enough. Dealing with migratory processes without us addressing the main roots that cause these migratory processes is useless. And not addressing these roots gives the possibility to this sort of new jihadism to proliferate. So as you can see also in the slide, in the last years, there has been a new proliferation of EU military operation trying to stabilize the region of Sahel, not with so much success, to be honest. But if we acknowledge that stability in the Mediterranean is no longer exclusively bound to considerations inherent to the Mediterranean basin, but has become dependent also on peripheral region like the Sahel, or as we said, the Horn of Africa, for example, we also have to understand that the military option is not enough in order to be successful. So the idea that we are assisting is that we have to deal with local instabilities in these areas as a possibility to become international threats in the coming years. And so EU countries, European countries, as well as Western military operation have tried to address these problems in order to, in a sort of preventative attempt from them to become international threats. The thing is that we have seen in the last years also the penetration of other foreign powers. We heard before about the role of Turkey, but also the role of Russia and China in these countries. We have assisted in the last weeks to the penetration of the Wagner Group in Mali, for example. We know that China has been using the Belt and Road Initiative in order to gain influence in many African countries. So this is a situation, the influence of foreign countries, that goes to add to the other structural problems of this region that can let us, here at its time, at least, we try to give a definition to this new area, new geographical area, where we find a new jihadism that is proliferating thanks to some structural factors. We call the Black Belt Road, meaning a geographical area that goes from coast to coast in Africa. So from the Horn of Africa that cuts across the Sahel until the Atlantic coast, which is in connection with through the Indian Ocean to the original sources of jihadism, the Middle East and Afghanistan. But this new jihadism presents some very specific features, thanks to a mixture of social and economical factors, for example, the lack of statehood or strong institutions, the distrust towards states, most of the time Western-based governments that are not effective in providing services and delivering services to the population, thanks to interstate and intrastate conflicts and border disputes and demographic crisis. We have assisted also to the role of the COVID-19 pandemics in making these problems even deeper than before. So all these factors are amounting and are additioning to themselves, creating the conditions for this sort of new jihadism to proliferate. This is different from the past because it is less ideologically pure. Why we assist to a sort of mixture of criminal crime, common crimes. And so we have criminals that are trying to use jihadist organizations and jihadist groups in order to exploit this sort of jihadist opportunity in order to commit ordinary crimes and common crimes. But this sort of mixture is very dangerous because it is creating a sort of area, a gray area, where there's no possibility to exert any control by the local institutions, and which involves also our military operations. We have said that about the involvement of Italian and French, for example, military operation, but not just them. We have also US military there, and the EU is involved in those countries and in this region. The creation of this new area that is made more dangerous by the penetration, the geopolitical pressure created by hostile foreign geopolitical countries is creating a new typology of threats that is strictly connected to the concept of the hybrid threats, which means not a direct involvement of foreign countries, but a new mixture of new ways of threats, not necessarily tied to the military option. Why this is relevant to the Mediterranean security? Because geography here plays a role. We have porous borders, we have common channels of communications between the countries, which include the passage of illicit goods, which include the passage of migrants toward the shore. And we have some common factors, some of the economic troubles, the difficulties of local institutions, for example, the crisis of democratic representations, are all elements that we can find also in the Maghreb and in North Africa area, and that are flourishing in these countries. And the possibility that this new threat that is developing in the Black Belt Road could be replicated in these countries is very high. And so we see that today it is very difficult to address the Mediterranean area and the Mediterranean region without considering the peripheral regions that are strictly connected, especially in the southern side. So just to conclude, why the Mediterranean Sea is relevant today for European countries, especially because taking control of the sea is a first step in addressing the roots that create problems and future threats in the land, especially in the African continent today. Knowing that in the Black Belt Road, let's say so, this new threat is arising, this new jihadism is flourishing, is crucial in order to understand what may happen few kilometers northern of this Black Belt Road, and in order to address how present and future Western and EU military operation should be conducted and what are the dangers that they run. So thank you very much for your attention and for your time.
Thank you, Luca. We are now entering, we start 3 o'clock, 4, 5, it's almost 2 hours and a half. I think it's a great time now. If you have, all of you have energy for question and answer. If you have the question, please just unmute the microphone and ask the question and ask to whom you want you to answer. So time is for Q&A. Is there anyone who want to raise the question? So I think you are all tired. I would like to thank all of you for the participation and all those distinguished speakers. Also, I want to remind you for all of you that you want to write down on the subject. We would like to publish all the articles in our Security Science Journal. It is on our website on our institute, and we would like to publish this as a first issue for the next year. So it will be great if you can submit articles before the February next year. It would be great, so that we can have the first issue starting with Mediterranean. Also, I will remind our colleagues, colleague Akrap or other from our group, maybe in March we will organize a next session of Mediterranean security involving much more our colleagues from particularly from African countries, from North African countries, because we are very interesting to and we are very keen to understand also situation in their part of the world. So thank you so much and hope to see you soon and goodbye to all. Bye.
Thank you very much, Doc.
Bye bye. Very much.
Thank you.